Let's head up to Kentucky for what I think is a rivalry game. Maybe more so for the Wildcats than the Gators, but Florida now travels to Lexington to take on the undefeated Kentucky Wildcats. Now, what's crazy is that Kentucky's favored in this game. This would snap a streak of 34 straight games where Florida was favored against Kentucky. The last time the Wildcats were favored was in 1988. They were a 1-point favorite that day. They lost by 5. And the last time Kentucky was favored by 2 or more points was in 1978. They lost by 2. They were favored by 4. So it's not often that we see Kentucky as the favorite taking on the Gators. Here are the question marks in the game. Can Graham Mertz continue to stay really efficient? He's completing nearly 78% of his passes. That leads the SEC. That's 4th in college football behind J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, and Dylan Gabriel. He's going against DBs that were untested coming into the season, unproven coming into the season. The corners had 4 combined starts coming into this year, but Andrew Phillips and Maxwell Hairston have really done a pretty good job in these first few weeks, albeit against lesser competition. I look at what Graham Mertz has faced, though. I think that Graham Mertz has seen Utah. Graham Mertz has seen Tennessee. We're not really, at this point, totally sure what Kentucky has. This will be by far their biggest test as far as the quality of personnel that they're going to face in man-to-man situations. I think Graham Mertz has done a great job. Now, they're not airing it out. They're not taking a ton of shots. He's being efficient. He's working the underneath stuff. And Billy Napier's done a good job of keeping things in check and not putting too much on his shoulders. Can Florida's defense keep rolling? Year 1 under Austin Armstrong, they're number 1 in the SEC, 4th in the Power 5, 5th in the FBS in total defense. 245 yards a game given up. Through 4 games last year, they'd allowed 424 yards a game. So they are way improved from where they were a year ago. The first year DC is doing a great job. The one issue for Florida up to this point, and we'll talk about this in a minute as it relates to Devin Leary, they've only forced 1 turnover. And that's not really what you're looking for. That's tied for the fewest in the FBS. The one way that you've been able to attack Kentucky the last 2 years has been really attacking their offensive line. And the offensive line for Kentucky has done a pretty good job this year, relatively speaking. Now, granted, last year they gave up 47 sacks. This year they've given up 4. So over the course of a 12-game season, they're on pace to give up 12. Granted, the competition will ramp up significantly here in the next few weeks, but so far they've done an adequate job. Now, part of that has to do with Devin Leary extending plays and keeping things alive, because there have been several times where if it was a statuesque quarterback, it's probably a sack. But Devin Leary's done a really good job of running around and extending plays and kind of helping that offensive line out, because that is a group that has consistently struggled in the last handful of years. Then you think about what Devin Leary has provided this Kentucky offense. Liam Cohen, the new offensive coordinator, well, it's year 1 on stint 2, because he was, of course, here 2 years ago, was gone with the LA Rams last year. Now he's back. The one thing that they have not done a great job of, I think, is they haven't really been a very efficient offense. They're kind of boom or bust. They're big plays. They're pushing the ball down the field. If you actually look at just the shot sheet with where Devin Leary is throwing the football, right now, 45% of his attempts are 11 yards or more downfield. 20%, nearly 20% of his attempts are 20 yards or more downfield. So this is a big play offense. I mean, they are trying to push the ball down the field. I think they need to work some of the underneath. They need to work some of the stuff at the line of scrimmage just to keep themselves in manageable situations. Yeah, it's great to take shots, but your quarterback's completing sub 60%. It's good that he's got good high yards per attempt, but man, you need to keep the chains moving, because if you get in obvious passing situations against Florida, against Georgia, against some of the teams that they're going to face in the SEC East, that's not going to be a winning recipe. They're going to have to take their shots, sure, but not with as much aggressiveness as they've had in the first few weeks. So I think that is going to be really, really important for Devin Leary to be more efficient, to be willing to take the check down, to be willing to take the underneath. Not every ball needs to be a home run. And that, I think, is the next step of evolution to keeping this offense moving a little bit and making sure they don't get into a difficult situation against some of the defensive lines, against still what I think is a relatively unproven offensive line. Kentucky's got great weapons. Kentucky's got an elite running back in Ray Davis, and I think Devin Leary's best football in a Kentucky uniform is in front of them. I actually think they get it done at home this weekend. It's going to be a chaotic environment. It's going to be a loud environment. I think Kentucky pulls off a big win for their program to set up what would likely be an undefeated matchup against Georgia next week in one of the games of the weekend in college football.